Welcome back to the Successful Events podcast. Today is a little bit more tactical. I'm going to go into some more just like facts, things to honestly not forget. It's 3 common mistakes that usually happen, how you're going to be able to avoid them, and it's going to be more tangible. I'm going to give you some examples. I'm going to walk you through it. This one is definitely much more like quick takeaways. I'm not going to dilly-dally on all the things because that's what I can do sometimes. So get ready to jump in, get ready to hear about these 3 takeaways, and then let's connect. Let's jump on. These are very similar things to what I share in my weekly newsletter that I send out to my amazing Successful Events Insider. We'd love to have you a part of that. So let's jump in and dive into the 3 common mistakes people make when planning. Welcome, everybody, to the Successful Events Podcast, your go-to podcast for hosting impactful, purpose-driven events. I'm your host, Kat Roten, an event strategist and logistics expert, here to help you plan and execute events with confidence. You'll hear from top industry experts sharing the latest trends, live coaching calls with myself and fellow community members, and of course, my personal favorite, strategies to help you stay true to your vision without the burnout while you're event planning. But here's the thing, your event isn't just about the details. It's a time to celebrate your hard work, to show up fully in your energy at your event, and to lead with confidence. That's why we focus on self-care, intentionality, and making sure your event aligns with your purpose so it doesn't just look good, but it also feels good for you too. Let's simplify the process and make it unforgettable. Today, we are going to jump into the really 3 most common mistakes, common things people forget to do, or they don't think about, or they just overlook it in the process of planning the event. And I'm going to get really specific on these. There's 3 of them exactly. I'm going to walk you through what these 3 are, and then you can take away with you and be like, am I forgetting this right now in the middle of my event planning process? Am I good right now? Am I not thinking about these things? I need to be thinking about them. So we're going to jump in and we're going to kind of dive into these 3 specific common mistakes. So the first one that I want you to think about is communicating with your vendors, your sponsors, and your speakers. And I didn't add attendees, you'll see in there, because attendees we're pretty good about. We know we need to communicate to them. Sometimes it might be you don't know exactly what to communicate, and I'll be honest, just over-communicate. It's the best thing for everybody, just over-communicate. But you'd be surprised how many event hosts actually leave their vendors, the sponsors, and the speakers like kind of feeling lost in the planning process. It's like they know vendors are a little different because you're probably chatting to them more, but like speakers and sponsors, you're just kind of going about dealing with all the details, dealing with all the planning, and you kind of forget to come back to them and update them sometimes. Now, this is where, like in my community, I talk about the importance of contracts. I talk about the importance of you scheduling some calls with them ahead of time, and I'll actually share that in here too. But you're not doing this intentionally. And if this is you, you're not alone, and it's okay. But there's just so much going on that your communication just kind of slips through the cracks, and literally to the point that sometimes vendors get lost finding the venue. Yes, that has happened, and not just one time. So here's some things I would recommend for you when it comes to communication. What can you add to your checklist? What can you put into, if you use Asana, ClickUp, some way that you're managing your event and keeping up with tasks? What are things to put in there to remind you that, all right, I need to do this and remember to speak to this speaker. I need to do this to speak to sponsors. So what I would recommend is for your sponsors, I would host a call about 2 to 3 weeks before your event and have it as like this update. You're going to record it. You're going to send it out to anyone who doesn't make it, but it literally is, here's the event. Here's what's going on. If you are attending live, here's what's happening. If you are not attending in person, here's what's happening. And I'm not saying there's a virtual option. I'm just saying like, just giving them a gist of, as a sponsor, what's happening. And then set expectations for them. This keeps them from each of them bombarding you, and they can be asking questions throughout the call. So that then also in the email, anyone who didn't attend the call and anyone who doesn't actually watch the recording, because that's probably going to happen, I would recommend putting some of those questions in bullet point form as like FAQs or questions from the call that people could skim through and read so they're not bombarding you with those same questions. For speakers, I would do very similar except you're going to want to meet with them each individually. And I would go through reviewing their slide decks, the presentation details. I would still do this 2 to 3 weeks out as well to make sure there's time for them to make tweaks and time for you to just make sure you're setting expectations as well. It also helps you feel confident and aligned with them. And to make sure right now, does your schedule of events, the schedule of the speakers make sense after you meet with them? Because maybe Catherine is going to end up needing to be before Taylor, but right now she's after Taylor. So we're going to need to make that swap because it just doesn't make sense anymore with the flow. So great way just to prep yourself. And then for everybody, so this is going to be your sponsors, this is going to be your speakers, and I would even recommend sending this to your vendors, are sending a 2-week, a 1-week, and then a 2 to 3 day email with any last minute details or reminders. And honestly, each of those emails could basically look the same. And it's something along the lines of location, any special instructions, parking, any special instructions, like if there's specific times that they need to be there, or something specific that you need from them between now and then. But I would make it as generic as possible where you just send it to all the vendors, you send it to all the speakers, and you send it to all the sponsors. There are multiple tools that really can help you managing this process. I already mentioned Asana or ClickUp you might use. There also is Active Campaigns or another email provider that you might use. And then there even is things like Hey Summit, which I will dive into eventually, that helps manage your virtual and in-person events and registrations. So just don't forget, like, these are important. Don't forget them. And then also, don't forget them after the event. They are going to be great individuals, the speakers, the sponsors, and your vendors, to give you some feedback. Send them a personalized note, thanking them for being there. If there was something specific they did that was incredible, like, shout them out for it. Ask for some feedback. Do a generic Google form again or something, and then ask for testimonials. I know it seems kind of strange, but I would still ask for testimonials because this will help you anytime you're working with future vendors, future sponsors, to know and have a record of the experience that they've had this time around with you. One more note I will make here too, I talk about this in my sponsorship trainings, is for these individuals. So if you really loved working with the vendor, the speaker, the sponsor, asking them in that feedback form, like, would they ever be interested in working with you again or sponsoring you again? So just a little side note there. All right, number 1. So that was number 1, communicating everything. Number 2, another common mistake, overloading the schedule. I love you, and I think you are amazing, and you're going to host an incredibly awesome event. And please do not go through jam-packing your schedule with tons of speakers and tons of trying to do workshopping and masterminding and networking and left and right and back and forth and all the things. I want you, though, to also take a step back, provide as much value as possible. But I want you to think about a time that you went to an event and it was full of speakers and full of all these things. How did you feel when you left? Typically, and I can personally say this, like, I leave on a high, but then it slams you in your face. You're like, holy crap, what am I doing now? What do I do next? What about this? What about that? And then it's like you crash. Literally. Attendees will leave feeling this overwhelmed. They'll feel kind of rushed, like there was just so much back and forth that they never got really to sit with anything, and they'll feel drained. They'll feel tired, just like you will. If you really jam-pack the day of event, you're going to feel drained, which you need to take time and rest afterwards, but also during, you want to be able to lift people up and have energy. Get people up and moving. Get them to stand. Get them to dance. Get them to move. Get them to network and connect with one another. Give them moments, 5 minutes to sit and reflect after each speaker, something to let them take everything that's in their head and put it out on paper. The other thing is breaks. Please allow breaks. Please communicate that, like, people can get up in the middle also of the event, if you're okay with that, to go to the bathroom, to go grab some water, to go grab a snack. Also, allow them breaks because people really want to be there and don't want to miss anything. So make sure you're strategically putting in breaks throughout. And again, giving them time to take things out of their head and put it down on paper. So here's my advice. 2 things I want you to think about. 1, when you're originally starting this planning process, and this could be in the middle of it if you're already in the middle of it, and you're envisioning the event, think about what the flow is. Where are there buffers between speakers? There's some maybe experiences happening and then putting in little breaks. Add just an extra 5 minutes. Add just an extra 10 minutes. It makes a huge difference in your flow. And then the other thing is with your speakers, don't tell them about the extra time. Tell them they only get their 30 minutes or they're only getting their 45 minutes. And communicate the importance of staying on time with them. And the vendors, make sure the vendors know that we really need to stay on time. What does the time frame look like? The biggest thing I will say for you, and the best example I can give you, is I helped coordinate a leadership summit in 2024. And the biggest thing we did was prioritizing the breaks, and we built in plenty of this breathing time in between. People, like between speakers and everything, people were commenting how they loved the flow. Like there was some heavy sit down time, but every 45 minutes to an hour, they were able to get up, they were able to walk around, they were able to grab coffee or some water. They felt energized. And honestly, they were excited for the evening events because they didn't get drained during the day. Almost everyone ended up going to the after party gathering that was happening. And that shocked me and the event host because typically you'll get a good chunk that come, but not everybody, especially after a leadership, a little heavier conference. So, and we ended on time, which was the even better thing. So in my head, when I'm saying this to you, when in doubt, less is more. I think you've heard that before, probably from other people. Just give them an amazing experience. Give them that little bit of tangibility, inspiration, and motivation. And I promise it's going to go a long, long way. You do not need to overgive, and you do not need to provide tons and tons and tons of value. Just provide value. All right, and we're going to jump into the last and third one, which another mistake is ignoring the what ifs. I love saying just ignoring the what ifs. And then people are like, what do you mean? And I'm like, budgeting for the unexpected. You need to budget for unexpected cost. Things are going to pop up. They're going to happen. It's a matter of if, it's not a matter of when. And it's why you need to have a buffer that is in your budget that is non-negotiable. I would recommend anywhere from 10 to 15%. It's little things. It's little simple things. It's the gratuity and tip that maybe you didn't think about. It's the credit card fees that you forgot that were going to come out when people pay you. Just little stuff to think about that will be a part of this. I'm not going to dwell on this too much. I can run through all of this for you if you really want to, but like I mentioned, gratuities. It's special event insurance. A lot of states require you to have that. It's required usually by most venues. And then random office supplies. You might need pens, sticky notes, notepads. They add up so fast. So give yourself the buffer. Give yourself a little thing. And guess what? If you don't hit the 10 or 15%, that goes right into your profit. So don't worry about it. But just stay ahead, expect them, plan for them, and you're going to thank yourself later. That's for sure. So I'm not saying that these are the only common mistakes. There are plenty others. I'm not saying you can 100% avoid these. I'm not saying that everyone is perfect when putting on their event and that they're going to do all of this, these three common mistakes you're going to do perfectly and not make another mistake like this again. I'm not saying that. These are just to make you aware so that you can, again, like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, start to add these into your checklist, add these to your tasks that you need to do and get them put down. So you're like, okay, I need to do this, this, and this, and I need to do this, this, and this, and just do it to your best of your ability. It's a lot of fun. It just requires a little intention. It doesn't change a lot of your planning process. I would love to answer any questions you have about this. I'm happy to do another episode with another 2 or 3 of these. So connect with me on Instagram if you're not already. Shoot me a DM, shoot me a message and just say, like, what stood out to you from this episode? What did you take away? Is there something specific in here that you had a question about? I'd love to answer that for you. And then on the flip side of it, I also would love to just know, like, is this something else you'd like me to do again? It was a fun episode to do. Actually a little longer than I expected as well, but I hope this provided value so that you can set yourself up for success in hosting your event. I really want to make sure this is something that you feel good about going into and really executing on with your event. So just remember, every event is an extension of you and your business. Just keep it simple. Don't get overwhelmed. Find support when you need it, and let's take that next step with confidence. I will see you next time on the Successful Event Podcast. Bye, guys. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't miss our weekly newsletter, The Successful Events Insider. It's the best way to stay connected so you never miss an episode, you hear special announcements, or behind-the-scenes updates. Each week, I take what we cover here on the podcast, and I'll dive even a little bit deeper and give you a little bit more behind the scenes of what is going on in my life and the events world. So join us inside the Successful Events Insider. There's a link below in the show notes. Get the support, the strategies, and the inspiration you need to make your next event your best one yet.